Hello, my name is Hannah Tripp. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I'm excited for the opportunity to share a bit about my research on monitoring Great Plains playas with the Sentinel-2A and 2B satellites for ecological and hydrological applications. The goal of this study was to demonstrate the feasibility of using high-resolution satellite data, like that from the Sentinel-2 mission, to remotely monitor playa water levels over short timescales, which could be useful for a variety of ecological and hydrological applications, such as determining which playas are most important for various sorts of wildlife, like waterfowl, or estimating the amount of aquifer recharge. Playas are shallow, ephemeral lakes that are situated in closed topographic depressions. There are no streams flowing in or out of them, so that means the only way that water can leave the playa is by evaporating into the air or percolating down into the soil. Some playas hold water almost all the time, unless there's a really exceptional drought, while others will almost always remain dry. There are tens of thousands of playas that are scattered across the high plains, and while some of these can be several kilometers across, about 80% of playas are quite small, no more than a couple hundred meters wide, and most are very shallow, generally less than a meter deep. So why should anyone care about playas? Well, firstly, they're biodiversity hotspots. They support a lot of plants and animals that you wouldn't find on the high plains otherwise. Everything from amphibians like tiger salamanders and spadefoot toads to a wide variety of birds, including migratory shorebirds and waterfowl. Like so many other things, playas are threatened by climate change as well as changes in land use. A number of studies have found that the number of wet playas has significantly decreased over the last few decades. Like you can see in this graph from a paper by Starr and McIntyre from 2020 that shows the decrease in the number of wet playas between 1986 and 2008. There have been a number of previous studies looking at playas using satellites, but they were done on annual or even decadal timescales. As far as I know, this is the first study to monitor playas on a sub-monthly timescale. A lot of the previous studies also utilized lower resolution satellite imagery such as Landsat, which is not able to resolve many of the smaller playas. On the bottom you can see a comparison of Sentinel-2 versus Landsat 7. And you can see while the larger playa number 2 shows up on both, the Landsat struggles with number 3 and fails to resolve number 1 at all. So a little more about the data used in this study. As previously mentioned, the satellite imagery was from the European Space Agency's Sentinel-2 mission. One thing really nice about this data is that it's freely available. You just need to create a free account with their Copernicus Open Access Hub, and then you can start searching and downloading images. The Sentinel-2 mission currently consists of 2 satellites, Sentinel-2A and Sentinel-2B. 2A was launched in 2015, and 2B was launched about 2 years later in 2017. They both have 13 channels in the visible and infrared, and these satellites share the same orbit but are separated by 180 degrees. So they're always on opposite sides of the Earth from each other. This means that even though each individual satellite has a return period of 10 days, taken together, the return interval is only 5 days. Other data used in this study includes range gauge data from the National Climate Data Center, radar imagery from the National Weather Service's Advanced Hydrological Prediction Service, and evaporation estimates from the Texas Water Development Board. This is just a quick video from the European Space Agency showing how the satellites orbit and image the surface of the Earth. As you can see, they are in the same orbit 180 degrees apart from each other. And as they orbit and the Earth rotates, they image more and more of the surface until eventually, after 5 days, the entire surface has been imaged by at least one of the satellites at least one time. For this study, we focused on 2 regions in Texas, both 30 by 30 kilometers. Region 1 has clay-lined playas of various sizes that are underlain by a mix of sand and gravel, which shows up as yellow on this geological map. Region 2, on the southern edge of the high plains, is in a karst region that is underlain by limestone. The main study period was from September 2018 to February 2019. The Playas were mostly dry initially, followed by a period of heavy rain in late September and October across the entire region, and this was followed by another dry period from November to February. We also looked at both regions between April and July 2021. So to classify land cover in the satellite imagery, I used the Semiautomatic classification plugin, which is a free plugin available for QGIS. The way it basically works is you select a number of training areas in your image, and then using the reflectance of those areas, the plugin will classify the land cover over the entire image. Generally, selecting multiple areas with the same type of land cover will give the program a better reflectance range and result in a more accurate classification. So I went through the land cover classification process for a whole series of images of Region 1 from between September 2018 and February 2019. I've selected just a few of these images so you can get an idea of how the water area changed during that time. The first image for September 25th on the left, you can see there's very little water, especially compared to the next image after a significant amount of rain. On October 28th, there was a lot more water and a lot more playas. And then after that, it was mostly dry, and you can see the water area shrinking during that time. This graph shows how the water area changed over time in Region 1. The blue bars show the water area as calculated from the Sentinel-2 imagery, and the green line shows the cumulative precipitation based on nearby rain gauges. At the beginning of the period, there was only about 1 square kilometer of water area. Then, after a significant amount of rainfall in late September and early October, the water area reached a peak of around 15 square kilometers around October 28th. This was followed by a relatively dry period where the water area steadily declined. This satellite data combined with rainfall and evaporation data could be used to estimate aquifer recharge. As previously mentioned, playas are closed basins, meaning the only way water can leave is through evaporation or percolation down into the soil. The satellite data combined with the mean playa depth could be used to estimate the total volume of water. And once you've subtracted the volume that you would have expected to have been lost by evaporation, any remaining water loss is likely due to percolation down into the soil. The amount of playa inundation can vary significantly over short distances. This map shows Region 1, which was almost completely dry until some heavy thunderstorms came through in early July 2021. The light blue square shows the boundary of Region 1, and the dark Blue shows the water area on July 9th. The base map is the radar estimated precipitation for the previous week. You can see in the red and orange areas, which are the areas that got the most rainfall, they have a lot of playas full of water, and then the yellow areas, which receive comparatively less rainfall, have hardly anything, even though there are playa basins scattered fairly evenly over this entire region. These images are from Region 2, which, if you remember, is the southern Karst region underlain by limestone. The playas here look quite a bit different than those in Region 1. When viewed from above, they tend to have this sort of cracked appearance, and if you look at the soil lining these playas, it's much more rocky. You can see the chunks of limestone, and you do not have the thick clay layer that you would expect to see in the playas further north. On the right, you can see this map showing these three playas, which filled with water after some heavy thunderstorms went through in early June 2021. On June 6th, they have quite a bit of water in them, but then just 10 days later, on June 16th, it's almost all gone. This suggests that maybe more of the water from these playas is percolating into the soil compared to what you would see with the clay-lined ones further north. So in summary, this research demonstrated the ability to monitor spatial and temporal changes in playa inundation on sub-monthly timescales from satellite. This sort of satellite imagery could be very useful for a number of ecological and hydrological applications, particularly if you combine it with precipitation and evaporation data. Further work needs to be done to determine the best water detection algorithm to use to classify land cover, particularly for shallow playas that tend to have more vegetation sticking up over the surface. And more work is also needed to scale up this kind of monitoring to longer timescales over wider regions. Thank you all very much for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions. I'd also like to thank the West Texas A&M Graduate School. The Kilgore Graduate Student Research Grant I was awarded helped to fund this research.